Hey, real quick before we start this video, at noon PST or 3 p.m. EST, as of this video coming out, I'm going to be doing a live stream on my Twitch, which I've been doing pretty often as well for the One Piece card game. And it's going to be the stream ends when I lose 10 times with Newgate, kind of to commemorate this video coming out and just kind of getting, I guess, more data points after the fact. So if you guys want to check it out, it should be a good time, should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. Link to my Twitch is in the description, which you guys should be following anyways, and enjoy this video. Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have my next entry into my series of complaining about red, I suppose, but it is the OP04 edition, and jokes aside, and I promise you it's a joke, I'm not just complaining about red, but I did want to do an opinion piece based off just, the first one is in July when red was doing super good, and then afterwards, a month later, we did another video after the erratas took place and to kind of discuss about that, and now that we're in a completely different format with OP04, I want to kind of re-examine, how good Red's been doing in the first couple weeks of this format too. So again, most of my my videos and my content, I like to make more, less opinion-based and more fact-based off of results and providing results and everything else. So this one's a little bit different. So I want to kind of preface with, this is reflecting on data, but also to give my opinion with that data. You guys can have different opinions, and I love hearing them in the comment section below as well. But this is just, again, my opinion. So if you guys differ from it, that's fine. It's not anything that I think is bad in any way from that. So I encourage these discussions as well. And then it's not also a call of action from Bandai to make any restrictions or not. We're obviously going to make some discussion about restrictionless changes that I would not mind seeing at the end of this video. But there's nothing that I think this is not a call for action for Bandai to do that either. And this is not me complaining. It's more of a discussion. I know that's a thin line for some people at some times, but that's what the aim, at least for this video, is as well. So we're just going to jump on into it. We do have the data part of this video. So here are just some data points from the OP04 regionals that we have as well. All of this data is also on my website if you guys haven't checked it out. So you guys have access to it to find your own results and everything and get your own conclusions, which again, I really do, support you guys having your own conclusions off data and that kind of stuff. But we did have 6 regionals across the world, since the English format is also in Europe, in Latin America, and in Oceania, as well as North America, but 5 top 16s and 1 top 32, so 112 topping list, and of those we had 31 Newgates, 26 Laws, 12 Zoros, which ends up to being 61% of the topping list for these first couple weeks. And then also, if we look at the winners too, we had 2 Laws, 1 Zoro, and then this past weekend alone, we had OP04 Dofi, we had Queen, and we also had Eustace Kid for those winners as well. So that does make some difference. I don't think, and this could be wrong, I don't think that the winner of the event necessarily matters as well as the spread across a top 16 or something, but I did want to note that as well because that is still a data point for those. And also the Laws and Zoros were during the first couple weeks, and this past weekend was where the Dofi, Queen, and Kid won the event, so that's also a little bit impactful as well. So we do have that, and I also do have the data for some of the regionals. It's not all of them, but we did have 3 regionals. Don't worry about that other part, but 3 regionals where I did have all of the leaders for that. So it does show of the 1251 players that were playing in these events, only 41% of them were playing one of those 3 decks. So 220 were playing Newgate, 180 were playing Law, and 122 were playing Zoro as well. So you look at the pie chart from the previous screen on the bottom left there, and it's kind of showing that all of them have really good conversion rates. At least Newgate and Law do as well. And I don't think some people will give you the kind of not excuse, but will say, "Oh, of course, Newgate topped as much. Everyone was on it." And I think that's not completely true if we can get a lot of this data. And sometimes we don't get this data, but I think just showing that half percentage wise, there's only so many Newgates, probably 10%, but then it got to 20% of the tops, right? So those conversion rates kind of show that it's not just brute forcing a top with a lot of people playing the deck necessarily. It shows more that the deck is doing so good that it doesn't matter necessarily how many people are on it. So that kind of data is there too. For again, it's not for all the events, but this is kind of just a little snapshot of what it kind of looks like in a little bit. So we do have that, and then also I do kind of sympathize for a lot of people who only do locals meta, and I do think that kind of stuff is different from high stakes regional formats too. So and again, I don't have a lot of this data, and this data is obviously a lot harder to get as well. And it also, since it is kind of such a snapshot for such a smaller event, they do have different results based on literally the people who show up that week. But I do have a couple of mid-range events. There are 50 to 100 people events that I've hosted or been a part of that I do also have my website. And the data is different. And I think that kind of supports a lot of people. And that, again, in my comment section, I talk to who they don't necessarily play in regionals, but they'll go to their 20-person locals. They'll say, I don't know why people want Law gone. It's never been an issue at my locals, or they want Newgate gone. And I think that's a little bit of a scene issue, or maybe just an issue of, people don't just play it at these 20-person locals at times, or when the stakes are lower, people don't necessarily play the deck that they think is going to win. They want to play the deck that they want to have fun with that week or something. So I don't know. This is the data for it of, 48 top 16 spots for these, and maybe top 16 is generous for sometimes how big these tournaments are, but 10 Laws, 2 Newgates, and 2 Zoros, with Zoro winning one of them, OP04 Dofi winning another one, and Katakuri winning another one. So if you guys want to see those results, they're there. They're the Zulu ones that I've been doing, and again, they're mid-range events, but I think that it does dictate that when the events are not as serious, people don't play as many of the quote-unquote serious decks. And my own personal opinion is that a lot of people who do play Newgate, Zoro, Law, they do it because they think it has the highest chance to win the regionals, and or at least top of the regionals. And based off the data that we have from actual regionals too, I think that's pretty clear and makes sense to me. But I did want to include this just to kind of show, at a locals level, maybe these decks are not as big of an issue, and that's fine. And that kind of sculpts some of the opinions that I see from other people who don't necessarily play more on the regional side too. So I did want to mention and kind of include that. And then also, real quick, we did have an OP04 3v3 this past weekend. This is kind of like a different format as well, but and this is only one data point. I did just want to mention that of the top 8 teams, 7 of them ran Newgate and 6 of them ran Law, which is a lot when there's only 8 teams. And first place and second place were just literally both running those 3 leaders of Newgate, Law, and Zoro. So that's just kind of a data point. And it's, again, it's not a strong data point, but I did want to mention the results for that. There are some decks that did well, but every one of the decks that topped ran red, and most of them ran 2 copies of 2 different red decks, with, again, 5th place running Luffy instead of Zoro, but pretty much 2 reds and a blue, and 6th place running only 1 red, but then yellow and Nami. So I think that's kind of a little bit telling from that side, just how I feel necessary red is to compete. But I also want to just one little data point. So that's all the data we're going to talk about for those. If you guys, again, want any of the individual events or anything, it's on my website. Links in the description if you guys want to check it out and help form your own conclusions and stuff. So anyways, all right, I'm going to talk about my bias because everyone is biased a little bit. And this is kind of what helps sculpt my own opinion. So if you guys have questions on that or not, but I play a lot of One Piece, and arguably I look at deck lists more than anyone else on literally the planet. I don't know if that's egotistical to say so, but I do a lot. I look at a lot of this stuff, and personally, I'm a little bit bored of seeing the same 3 decks that are mostly just the same from OP02 in the sense of Zoro and Newgate and Law. And I also know that that's not a fantastic reason to want to change a format either, because again, I'm like a 1% when it comes to a lot of that stuff, and boredom doesn't mean that we need to change it necessarily, at least from if you're balancing mindset is if you want it to the meta to be strong, or if you want the meta to be fun. I know those are 2 different things a lot of the time, but that's what's part of my personality of and just my personal opinion of, man, there's I've seen every configuration of Law at this point, and it's just so much of the same deck, and it's so crazy. Newgate and Whitebeard changes, or Newgate and Zoro changes up a little bit at times, but man, they are so much the same, and it's really driving me mad a little bit, but it's fine. I'll take the hit for that one. The second thing is that I'm okay with restrictions. I know some people do not like restrictions, and that's okay too. But at the end of the day, I think the idea of trying to improve the card game with restrictions is a fine idea. I know that's also hard to implement, and if you're not careful, you make a worse format than the one that you started with. But in general, I'm okay with the idea with that. But I know that some people, they are not okay with that, so there's that. And then also, a lot of my data and experience kind of skews to more of the high-level gameplay, and we kind of talked about it in the little data part, but I know a lot of other people's opinions and what they see are based on just having their locals or playing with buddies, and I think those are 2 different, areas of how to play the game, and that's just a difference. So that just kind of helps sculpt my opinion on it too, and why it might differ from someone who, again, just goes to their 20-person locals and doesn't really participate in regionals a lot, but being still invested in the game. So there's that. And so kind of going from there, kind of bouncing off the restriction part too. When I kind of like talk about restrictions or kind of what I want to see, I get these three a lot, and I just kind of want to give like a frequently like an FAQ kind of thing. So biggest one I see is that the card wasn't banned in Japan, or it's a different format from Japan, and I don't really get the obsession with that one as much. And the kind of the thing that I like to mention too is that when we start a format, we're not at day one. When Japan starts OP03, they were day one for that format, right? When we start OP03, we were like day 60 of that, because a lot of people who play in North America, they see the results that happen in Japan, and they start using the decks that they started and kind of refined already, right? It's not as simple as that, but I do think that the fact that that Japan didn't get it restricted doesn't mean that we shouldn't get restricted. I don't think that's a good enough reason in my mind personally. So that's again another opinion on that. The other like a big common one is that set 5 makes red unviable. Then just unrestricted when set 5 comes out. I don't really subscribe to that one either. If it makes the format better personally for you right now, why would you not do it? You can say this card gets restricted, set 5, it comes back to 4. Why would you not do that if the meta that comes out of it's better? So like that's my kind of viewpoint of it, if you guys have that. And then kind of the third and most important one is that the meta will evolve, and it's just the first month of it. And I agree. And I agree with that. Maybe the maybe part in that bubble is not the correct word for it, but I think that's fair. I think that is really fair for that. And I know that we're only technically in a month. It is a little bit of what I said earlier, where we're in kind of month 3 of this format for some people. But I do think that's fair in the point where it does take people time to adjust to new decks. And I do know that if people want to go to regionals, they're going to play the deck that they think they're going to win with, and in that kind of stuff. I don't personally believe that we're going to evolve much more than where we're at, but that's my opinion, and I respect people who are hopeful that with a couple weeks of training and people trying new stuff and getting better, especially since some of the decks, like I'd say like Don Quixote do Flamingo, Queen, and Rebecca, I think they are very grindy decks that you have to kind of figure out how they play differently than other decks. So I do respect that, but I'm a little bit pessimistic on it. I don't think we're going to get much change than where we're at, but I won't rule that out, and I do want to mention that as well. So, but those are pretty much my opinions, like the bias that I have, and kind of the I don't know how to say it. Like the common questions, if you guys ask me, are what kind of sculpts my opinion. Those are kind of it. So, we're gonna go to me talking about restriction stuff, and I do want to say this is if. This is not, these are cards that should be banned, should be affected, whatever. This is my personal opinion. If Bandai wanted to change the format, this is what I do. This is not something that I'm telling Bandai to change. This is not something this is not a hill I'm dying on. This is just a discussion, because I get so many people be like, oh, I can't believe Eggman wants Bandai to ban this card tomorrow. And that's not true at all either. Also, this is on a Thursday. If Bandai does any change stuff on Friday, there's no chance that they saw this video and did like a 24-hour flip around. I promise you that. Promise. So if that happens a second time, so much weird stuff happened because that one coincidence. Anyways, all right, we're talking about the cards. I know a lot of you guys just skipped to this part of the video, but here we go. All right, Zoro. Actually, I double clicked. Newgate. It is the most topping leader in the game. At least since release, it is. So it is very, very good. It is a very strong leader. It's doing very well, at least in the English meta. So the way that the leader works inherently changes the game. The fact that it is a 6K leader and a lot of cards are balanced around 5K leaders means that it is way different, and it means it sometimes invalidates some decks. And the fact that even if you lose the cards in life, you get to draw cards, which is good. And it gets out of a lot of attacks for free, because your opponent pretty much has to choose every turn of, do I want to play the card that I wanted to on curve, or do I want to try to pressure down your leader and not build the board, right? That's kind of like where we're at a lot of the time. Because like, let's say I'm at like turn 4 as black, right? As smoker, I want to say, all right, do I want to attack into Newgate, or do I want to play my Kuzan, right? And say I want to play my Kuzan or my Borsalino or something, and then I don't get a 5K leader into 6K, that does nothing, right? So it inherently gets out of an attack just because I'm a 6K leader. So I think that's a difference in that, being a 6K on offense and defense. And honestly, like I've really tried to like change my opinion and be open to it. But at this point, if it gets restricted or eroded, I'd be super okay with it at this point. I don't think if there was a clever errata to make it like have the same theming and be just as good or something like that, like I've thought about like, oh, what if it's only 5k during your turn, or like what if like there's a lot of those kind of what ifs for it, and I don't really know what would be the good one for it. So I honestly don't have a thing for it. But if this gets banned, I'd be super okay with it. So I don't know. I know that's an opinion. I know a lot of people who do play Newgate are simply only playing it because they think it can win. They don't necessarily like playing it. They just want to win, and that's fair and that's fine. But I don't know. I've seen this deck so much, and I do think it invalidates a lot of other decks too. But that's my opinion there. All right, Zoro. It is just incredibly generic for red, which is again a generic leader for one of the, if not the best color. It's since all the staples in red are mostly generic too, it just makes sense that both these pair together. And I think like we'll talk about another card after this one, but I think that it's because of all those things kind of combined. Zoro just gets a lot of things for free. I think its effective boost, everything on your field is just a little bit too good, especially since we have so many 1-drops and 2-drops that already get value. So you get to double up on that very easily. I think he just gets too much advantage for that kind of stuff. So I think I've been kind of peddling this one for a little bit, but it's just make his Errata the leader to limit what he can give a plus 1k to. Make it to like Straw Hats, make it to Slash characters, make it to Supernovas, something like that. I think that would be better than generically giving everything a 1k boost. But I will also agree that Zoro has been doing a little bit less good in this format right now compared to OP03. I think Law and Whitebeard have continued. Zoro's kind of dropped off a little bit, but that's kind of, if anything happens to Zoro, that would be what I would want from it. I don't think it's good enough to get banned, but I would like an errata if that's a possibility. All right, Curly Dedan. This card has been like, oh, what's wrong with this? There's nothing wrong with this card. There's nothing wrong to it too. Man, it gets so good. It is such a good value card. It searches so many good targets that it searches blockers. It searches 2Ks. It searches other searchers. Like all that is, I think at this point kind of busted. And honestly, I think it's, if we want to change anything, banning this card affects both Law and Zoro a good amount. Again, like this, how many times have you seen Dedan find play Nami, find some good card, and then Zoro can buff these up to 5k attacks very easily? It's just so much momentum. I feel like it shifts the game and how the game works, and I think it's a little bit too good. And on the same end too, if you're able to with Trafalgar Law, you play the Curly Dedan, you find a Nami finds a blocker. For one card, you have now 3 cards on the board for only 4 Dawn. It's so easy to set up your Law effecting, and I would argue too easy because of Curly Dedan. And other cards like Nami and like Bonnie, they do search cards, but most of the cards are more than 1 cost, so it's harder for you to like consistently get the like your effects off, so you can like consistently get 5 on the board. With the Dan, you can know that you have a pretty good chance of finding a 1-drop, and that kind of sets your Dawn. And it's just so consistent in a lot of ways, and especially since Trafalgar Law can recycle it, and there's just so many generic targets for it. I think it's too generic for how this card game works inherently, and I also think it kind of restricts how card design is moving forward, just because you have to think as a designer, oh, can this be found off Curly Dedan? Oh, then I probably can't make it anymore. And that's my opinion, if that's actually what's going on. But I'm pretty sure there's a good amount of talk about that. So limit or ban this guy, this card. I think it's fine for like 1 copy or just getting rid of it. I would be pretty happy. If anything changed, I think Curly Dedan would be the one for that. And then also like the talk that also happened. So Trindrop Linlin, I think this is the most hated card that's not red in this card game. Everyone has an opinion on it, and my personal opinion on it is, for someone who likes to play not aggressive decks or like playing more value and control decks, this card just invalidates everything that I try to play. And especially since Katakuri is so viable, I didn't make a pie chart for it, but Katakuri is like one of the most played leaders. It rivals the other 3 that we're talking about, and strictly because the Charlotte Linlin exists kind of thing. And so I don't know. I will kind of say that most people I talk to will agree that 2 back-to-back Linlins is stronger than 2 back-to-back Newgates. The fact that like most of the time when you play like a 9-drop or 10-drop, you play it at like the cost of like you don't really get the protection to like it's usually a really big cost. But the fact that Linlin heals you when you play it, and also It just does too much. It just does too much, and two of them back to back gets so much value for you. The fact that it's a 12K as a 10 drop, on paper doesn't seem so bad, but like it's so good. It's super good. Like if it was a 10K, maybe I wouldn't be so upset, but I feel like it's very hard to remove. If you try to spend all your turn removing it, then guess what? They're just going to play another one next turn, and I think that's too strong. So I would be okay with this card getting limited. I would not say like we're kind of like in the spot where, where do we stop incrementing the changes, right? Oh, if we think yellow is going to be too good because red's going to get neutered, like where does the line end? And I think out the gate, I think Linlin is a card that is worthy of being restricted to 1. Maybe not now and maybe not ever, but it does have that potential to me in some capacity, and it is potentially a trouble for this. And if I was to being super honest, as much as like red, I think invalidates some of the decks that exist right now, especially OP04 decks. I think 10-drop Linlin is the one that is the killer for Queen. Queen does not like playing against Katakuri. Rebecca does not like playing against Katakuri. Dofi has like a 50-50 at times. It's variant, but like it doesn't necessarily like getting hit down to 0 life, right? So I think that's kind of a point to make for me. If they want to try new decks, and if that's something they want to do, that's for it. So but that's kind of that. We have the current restriction list. My quick opinions on these. 9-drop I don't really know. I know that it has a good synergy with the new Luffy, the red purple one from the starter deck 10, so I know people want it back for that. But if Linlin's at 1, then I don't know if Newgate needs to be at 1, so I don't know. Rad Beam, I'm super okay with this card being at 1. It's still, I think, very great for what it is. There's no real cost behind it, and Guard Point is the more fair card for where we're at in the format, so I'm okay with that at 1. And then Marco, I still kind of believe that the 5-drop is actually the broken one. The 4-drop is obnoxious, but not too obnoxious. So I would honestly be okay if they flipped the legality of the 4-drop and the 5-drop, but I don't really have an opinion enough to say that Marco needs to come off, or like either of them. They're just kind of there. I don't know. I don't really have a strong opinion either way for those guys. So, but here's like the short answer. You guys are going to screenshot this, put it on Facebook, and be like, "Oh, look at what Eggman said." But no, this is strictly if Bandai wanted to change the format. These are things that I would target as like choice cards for it. So something to Newgate, either an errata that you guys think is fair, or a ban altogether, I'd be behind. If they want to do something to Zoro, besides get the limit of the Dan, they would errata it to only, what characters it would, get the buff to. And then restrict or ban Curly to Dan. And I think Linlin at 1 makes sense. I think that's fair. And I think Curly to Dan at 1 or 0 is also fair. And I think like the biggest thing is that like, something to this, errata to Zoro doesn't happen if the Dawn happens, and be at least keep an eye on like how good Charlotte Linlin could be if red is a little bit like if red wasn't around. I think 100% yellow would be the best deck, and that was like the conclusion of the video I made talking about yellow going to OP04, is that I think red's going to be really present and is going to keep it down a little bit, even though that we get some new tools with yellow. But with red keeping it out of check, I think honestly red is the deck that has a good matchup against Linlin, and like yellow in general. If that gets hurt, then yellow is going to be in a really good spot. So anyways, that's going to be the video. I know we've been talking about it for almost 30 minutes at this point, I guess over 20, but I did want to make this video. I know a lot of you guys have your own opinions. Again, I do honestly look forward to reading what you guys have to think about it. And again, I appreciate if you made it this far, and if you took in consideration my thoughts and my own opinions, and I truly do appreciate that. So that's going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.
Damn it. Damn it.